Society is so programmed us to push, push, push. We're like building on foundations that are skewered. Sitting with self and realizing what is your truth, what is the authentic you, and allowing each part of you to become heard. Remember, the greatest gift you can give anyone, including yourself, is the space to be heard. So what is it you need to hear, or what part of you needs to be heard? Now, with that acceptance, you bring it together and honestly, authentically, and curiously, you allow the union of self to occur at the core. When it comes to community group action, and you're going to bring all of you to the table, and that will gain honor and respect and trust. And suddenly you have, like a virus, transmitted the consciousness of union, of togetherness within yourself first. And that's how we build communities. Hello and welcome. What day is it? It is Tuesday. Welcome to live inspirational common unity collaboration, #LIC. I do need to change that name. So, but the point is, it was encapsulating exactly what's going on, which is a collaboration of community coming together to offer inspiration and insight in these times of uncertainty. And that's what we're doing today. Today's guest is a wonderful friend of mine, Nicole Franco. She's going to be sharing on the catalysts of culture. We'll talk to Nicole about what that actually is. Nicole is a community catalyst and a super connector. She's an inspirational empowerment and embodiment guide, consciousness entrepreneur and advisor. Her mission is to ignite, activate, and illuminate one's purpose. For the last 2 years or so, Nicole has been researching collaborative technologies and the needs for a glocal platform, a glocal platform. We'll talk more about that. She's been involved in thousands of collaborative projects over the last 15 years. Nicole's passionate about creating a membrane as a collective agency that supports the development of bioregional platforms for shared resources and connection. She's passionate about connecting the dots, forming nodes and alliances between different bioregions. Currently, she's grounding her research at a physical hub in Nevada City. Nicole is the steward and has been stewarding the mycelial web, which was an organic birth of a collaborative, collective hive genius to facilitate advances in working templates and protocols for collaborative projects. It's all about working together and finding the templates that work for us all. You can find out more in our catalystofculture.com. So without further ado, let us bring in Nicole Franco. Good morning, Nicole. Oh, just as you drink. Good morning. That would have been good if you had done through the nose or...
Hi, glad rising.
Hi, glad rising, yes. Glad timing, glad rising. How are you? Where are you?
I'm well. I'm at a new land project. It's called Heart Space. It's a beautiful space to drop into the heart, and so I'm in my heart today. And
hearts are good. So tell us what's going on with the collaborative world.
Wow, so much. It's difficult to track it all. Yeah, there's so many amazing projects, purposeful projects and initiatives within our community and beyond. And when I say our community, I'm speaking to transformative regenerative culture. Many of us that are watching right now have been to many of these gatherings, Tribalize and Lucidity Festival and Collab Camp Out. And yeah, and so there's a lot of different collaborative projects that are happening, and yeah, just tracking a lot of them and sharing. I've been doing a lot of sharing for the past 2 years.
what is the movement? What's the change afoot? You know, collaborative projects. I mean, give us an understanding of why that's different from any other working together relationship that's been going on for the last ever.
Well, to me, it seems that there's deeper relationships. You know, I've worked in many collaborative projects over the years as an event producer and as an entrepreneur, and I've been particularly the leader in it. And to me, collaborative projects feel more cooperative. There may be a lead in some initiative, but there's a wholeness to it. So that's where I'm at with collaborative projects. They feel like there's a deeper relationship with the people who are coming together to work for a purpose. We've experienced that, like I said, in some of our festival productions where there's a clear intention of why we're gathering. Yeah, and so I would say that in collaborative projects, there's a deeper relationship.
All right, so there's a bit more heart in it rather than it's like business and we're just using each other to get ahead. How's things changed since this whole Corona thing, like with collaborative work? Are people wanting to work more together? You would imagine that that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that that's so much the case. People, at least that I've spoken to, are looking to drop into projects with a purpose, that feel aligned with their personal mission, or are still kind of navigating around like what their mission is, what their purpose is to be here right now in this moment, and how they want to give back to humanity and to the planet.
Speaking of that, the sort of what's the purpose, do you think that because we're talking about these collaborative groups that are more heart-based, that there's less mind involved there and thus there's less like goal-orientated focus? Do you think that these people who are more heart-based are more fluffy, more like less aware of what their purpose is?
I think it's both. I think that so much of us get caught in the mind, especially now during this digital time. We've been gathering so much via Zoom and sharing our visions, sharing our projects and trying to figure it out. And one of the biggest challenges right now at this present time is our gathering in person, how much we as human beings imprint with one another by way of connection. So I'd say that there's definitely a challenge. Most people are seeking a platform to share on, and they experience challenges with where to share and how to share. Many of us gather in person and it's curated and there's workshops or panel discussions and people coming together. And so navigating the Zoom world, navigating the Facebook world is challenging in our collaborative space. We get so caught up in the head and so quickly do we respond, myself included. And I don't even want to use the word respond. I want to use the word react. So much is just like so quick with words on these Facebook channels, on these posts, that oftentimes we get lost in the head and not connected in our heart into our why. Why are we doing this together? What do we want? What is our purpose?
So what do you think apart from the physical distancing, what are some of the challenges in the collaborative world? You and I have been privy to several projects that are going on simultaneously, and several of the people involved in those are watching now. I can see.
Well, I can't see. Hi.
I've got a stream of comments coming up.
Awesome.
Mine is in the house, and Brian's there as well, and Brother Will. Hi, Brother Will. And so, anyway, the point is that we've seen a lot of these projects begin. What is it that you think is the main important points when projects begin, either whether they're land-based or whether they're digital-based or projects? What are the important keys that need to happen for success and sanity?
Right. Well, I'd say number one, relationships and culture. What is the culture and intention of our work together? So that's one of the challenges. Oftentimes it comes from a small group, which is beautiful, where an idea and vision comes to light. And one of the other challenges is resources. Many of us are seeking very similar resources in people coming together for marketing support or sponsorship or investment dollars. So I'd say resources as a broad term. Human resources and currency resources is a challenge. And what I'm tracking is that, and it's challenging for me to say many of us, because I sat in a circle this weekend, in an ally circle, and it was pointed out that we use we so much. And the question is, who are we? And is that really encompassing a diverse group of people coming together? And are we representing that as a whole? And so how can we be a whole when we're not really hearing from all different parts of the ecosystem? So I think that's also one of the challenges. So relationships, resources, culture, and and I think that goes with the culture. Like, what is the culture?
Right, right. Now, amongst our, forward-thinking liberal friends, there is this notion that we're all equal. And of course, but when it comes down to creating a project and we're all equal, means that everyone's noisy voice is in the equation. And does that help to get things done, or does it interfere with getting things done? Do we actually still need hierarchy inside structural organizations, at least to begin?
Well, that's one of my biggest challenges, through my cilial network, is that wanting to hear from all voices. And so for the past 2 years, we've included so many people to actually hear their voices and hear their visions and hear their projects. And I'm really grateful for that social experiment, because I was able to really open myself up to a broader field of what's happening. Where I'm at right now is wanting to refine into a smaller group now, and it's this notion of like contract, expand, contract, expand. It goes into our spiritual practices. It goes into the nature of all beings, and the nature of nature, right? It's the seasons of it all. And so how can we mimic, so to say, nature? And so my cilial network has been such a beautiful, expansion of who's doing what are we seeking, what's the purpose. And I feel right now is a time for us to come together in more of an intentional way, to really call in and design the culture that we are desiring.
Right, right. I love that, what you said about the the contract and expand, because it is how nature works. That famous study where they shot light over at cells, and the cells multiplied when the light was interrupted, when it was pulsed, the same light frequency, same intensity. If you just shone the light at it, it didn't multiply as quickly as if you pulsed that light. So that this on-off period, and how do you see that developing in terms of like structures? Doesn't need to be then that core solid center, and then from there it kind of expands and takes everyone's voice in and then comes back down to the core. Is that what we're talking about?
I believe so. I'm part of another group where they've been showcasing a participatory commons with Jeff Clearwater and the Village Lab group. And essentially it's looking at the DNA. What is the DNA of it? And I think it's really interesting. I'm not completely versed in the gene keys and in human design, but I feel like that those systems actually play a really beautiful part in how we're co-creating together. So what I'm looking at is like, essentially, like, we look at all these different projects and initiatives and visions, and there's mission statements and core values and all of these beautiful words that are describing who and what and everyone is. And I've been in deep inquiry around the universal law and, you know, like what's beneath it all, like as we start to shed the layers of the identity. What is the brand, our logo, what's our Facebook page, like how are we promoting, but at its core, like what is it? And so I'm still in inquiry with that. And you know, I would love nothing more for, you know, a unified field of people to come together to create that core. And in that core, it become essentially a spiral, so that these roles are the DNA, and that if we're collaborating on a project, and we're in this co-creative state, that there are certain hats that people can wear, but if, you know, someone steps out, it's designed in a way that the next person or being can step in and be able to pick it up and be present with it.
Yeah, sounds sort of complicated.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's why we're still trying to do this thing. This conversation's been happening for how many years? Lifetimes.
do you think that maybe we're going about it slightly inefficiently? Like I remember when I was writing my book, my friend and coach said to me, "Who's it for?" I said, "It's for everyone." He goes, "No, mate, it can't be for everyone." I said, "Why? Why can't it be for everyone?" He goes, "Look, if it's for everyone, it means it's for no one." And I didn't quite get this at the time because I was coming from the holistic picture of inclusion. I didn't want to exclude anyone. Why would I exclude anyone? Anyone can read my book and it can inform them. But he was quite right in the notion that the masculine energy needs to target something. Let's not call it masculine. The yang needs to target something, needs to hit, needs to look at the bullseye and target it in order to not hit anything else. And if it's not targeting one thing, then it's not really targeting anything. What do you think of that with regards to how these collectives have kind of, you know, this sexy term to say organically created, you know, we're an organic hub, and, you know, and that's a sexy term, but it also takes out of the equation the sort of dedicated, focused, goal-orientated thing, which excludes all the other stuff. Like, is this just a new way of doing it, or do we need to honor the dimensions of targeting and acquiring and moving?
It's interesting, you know, I'm looking at it, and I'm really grateful for the biomimicry of the cell of an organism. It's coming up in a lot of our peers group, like the groups that are emerging, that are doing this social experiment and are writing these white papers around the membrane. And to me, like, I look at the membrane of it as the masculine or the yang, and inside is the feminine and the yin, and where creativity actually can take place in emergence. And I often use like the metaphor of like building a home, the tools that we need to build a home, and the structure to hold the home. But what really makes the home a home is a family, the familia, the feminine energy, like when it's populated. And so I look at the way like we've been building, you know, as humanity over these years of innovation. And, you know, as much as I value and am grateful for the innovation, we've got, you know, massive skyscrapers all over the place that are just like so expensive to inhabit, and, you know, strip malls, and, you know, these big, huge housing projects. And, you know, the housing projects are like, we are community. And it's like, well, what is community? You know, community is the coming together. It is that feminine, the familia. energy that comes in. And so many of us have been just like producing and penetrating to create without that culture that has truly been established and cultivated. And so, coming back to the mycelial network, and the metaphor of that is like, that's the underground, that's the fertility of the soil, that's the expansion part that I'm at least experiencing. Like, what is that fertile soil that helps the culture to thrive? And I feel and I believe that, yes, there's part where it's like, well, who are you speaking to? How are we speaking? I'm learning about the holistic view, the wheel of co-creation, and seeing that there are these spokes. And I'm really enjoying the work of Barbara Marx Hubbard and reading that. And it's, it's new to me, and I'm really grateful that the community that I'm part of have exposed me to it, because I feel like that's something that can actually be brought in. But in order for us to really thrive in those different spokes, there is that core and there is that membrane. So the core, I feel, is, the feminine, the familia, the DNA, and the membrane is the masculine, the structure of how it's being held.
Interesting metaphor, and even more interesting when you talk about the cell, because the mitochondria is the thing that powers the cell, and that comes only from the mother, the maternal line. So your mitochondria of the cell, which is inside the cell, basically controls the ion channels and the power of the cell, whether things come in and out of it. So there is a guiding point. And I suppose I would say that it keeps going, masculine, feminine, all the way down. It keep, yin yang. Some people don't like the term masculine, feminine because they think it associates with man and woman. But of course, that's not what we're referring to. We're referring to, the duality of nature. I liked what you talked about in the spiral dynamics, and having this sort of model that enables people to fill the gaps of other people. How much do people need to already be in their knowing of who they are to fit such a model? Like, do we need very specific, solidified, crystallized beings in order to fill those parts? Or, I mean, how do we start to measure who people are and where they fit in these spirals? How does that work?
And who are we to measure it, right? I think that's why, I love our siblings that have extensive knowledge and experience with human design and gene keys and the Enneagram and these other, the Mayan galactic calendar, and that can actually like share wisdom around that, and using those as a tool. Not necessarily like this is how you are and this is how you should be, but like really, again, I'm going to reference the participatory comments because I love that notion of like, what are our tools? We've been working in these ecosystem mapping sessions, and there's, in so many different groups of the mapping. What are we mapping? What are our tools? What are our protocols? What are our frameworks? And it's almost like, I don't know about you, but like when I was little, I used to play Zelda on Nintendo. And I just think about like when I would go around and you'd go to like these different, places, and you'd have this like toolkit, and you'd acquire these different tools on your journey. And so I often like reference the heroes or the Shiro's journey. And as we're moving through this experience, this human experience, like we acquire these different tools along the way. And so something that I'm really inspired by is creating, essentially like a directory or a portal where those who are still not quite sure what their purpose is, or really in a learning state, in a spongy state, that they could tune in and access that and actually connect with others within the field who are mentors, help support, or courses that can help support. And I feel like technology is one of our biggest challenges with that, is like where to go for the resources in that. And so, Yeah, having tools and being connected with those who have those tools to share and develop and like form a sense of like mastery in the gifts to share. I feel like so many of my friends are just stepping into sharing their gifts, things that they've been cultivating, and those gifts aren't necessarily quantifiable on a resume or on a LinkedIn. They're healers and they're energy workers, and they're tuning to different frequencies, and oftentimes, even for myself as a super connector, those skill sets aren't valued in a monetarily way, and so it comes up as a challenge.
Right. I want to get on the notion of like the times are changing. Are the neoliberal hippie healer, therapist, energy worker, spiritualist, is that time now coming back for those people? Because it seems like the Industrial Revolution was not kind to them.
Yeah, I mean, this is the time. There's that meme that floats around. It's like the world doesn't need any more. I forget what it says. The world doesn't need any more innovators, and what it needs is community builders and storytellers and healers and elders. And a lot of what I'm tracking, and also in my passion, is to help illuminate those stories and share those stories from our elders, from the indigenous cultures that have been not shown. So it to me, like, we've lost the ritual, we've lost the culture, and I'm still learning how to do that, right? And it's like I'm sitting here with my earrings that are beaded, that come from a certain culture, and like how to honor the source of where things come from, right? What is that I'm not a scientist, but I go back to like my science classes, and then the petri dish of the culture, of a healthy culture.
I like the notion of this sort of place and connection to place. How important do you think that is? We're moving into a digital era even more deeply now, and COVID obviously pushed us further online and further separate from ourselves. How important, and I laugh to see all these people with the fake backgrounds, and they show they're in Hawaii or show they're in, whatever, and out of space, and it's like they're obviously not in that place. How important do you think the place is, and our connection to place? Like, can we just be sat in a high-rise building in the middle of Korea? I mean, how important is it that we connect to the land that we're physically on in order to make any magic happen?
I think it's really important to connect with ourselves first. Really using the practice of tuning in and our own intuition, our own heart space, and our own culture. Really doing the inner work before stepping into the outer work. And I've had like the envy of the background. I'm like, my computer doesn't do that, and I know that I've been in my head around a lot of that, of as I'm like doing branding or taking images for social media, like, oh, what does this look like from an outsider perspective? And a lot of our culture in the United States has been shaped upon the external beauty. What does it look like? Even like on Zoom, I think it's backwards or something like that. It does like a mirror image on a set.
You can change it.
Yeah.
So you can read that, right? So
yeah, exactly. It's so
before it used to have it backwards.
Yeah. And so like it goes deep, like to do the inner work of what our programming and what our filters are, where, like the past 2 years of my life has been like this fast forward, like warp speed ahead of like deep shadow work. It's one of the other reasons why I really do love the Gene Keys, is because it helped illuminate a lot of the shadow work for myself, and help give like a form of reference to what I was experiencing. And I'm really incredibly grateful for that. And so, yeah, I feel like it comes from within first, to really tune into our connection with source, that we are source, And from that space, like then step into this 5D co-creative field.
Mm, mm. I like that. So starting at the source of self, and that is the most important aspect. What are some, and thanks, Lumi's put some nice comments about seeds, and we'll talk about seed, and I believe it's a seed exchange program, but we'll talk about that. It's in the notes. With regards to the looking at center of self and going to the self first, what are some of the important tools to use or to acquire with self-exploration? Because a lot of people are like, yeah, you know, I'm open, but I don't, I'm like, okay, open to what? Like, oh yeah, me. What should we be looking at inside ourselves?
Well, I can only speak to my experience. And to me, one of the biggest changes in my life that helped me open was embodiment practices. And so yoga was my first way in, of coming and stepping into my body and actually feeling what was moving through me. I'm an incredibly emotional person and an incredibly like highly sensitive being. And for many years, and I'll share my story, but I had an abusive relationship with alcohol and other substances. And that, like, through my experience, I realized like I didn't at the time have the tools to be in connection with what my human experience was. And I want to say like emotional intelligence, and that I'm still doing that work. I mean, we've been in experiences where my emotions have been like, ah, and that be part of it as well. Like that's tools of the culture and the community that we're in to be able to hold that space for that expression of the emotion also. So I'd say embodiment practices, being able to move energy that's pulsing through us is number one. And you know, number two for me has been a meditation practice, like having experienced a Vipassana retreat, which was not a retreat. It was like the hardest thing I've ever done in my life.
Not easy.
I really met like all of the inner dialogue that was taking place in here. And so I think it's like the silence, the meditation that helps us like witness as an observer that practice, and then the embodiment experience and the embodiment tools of being able to move. And something that's evolved from in my practice has been like from yoga that is like very linear and like moving in that direction to ecstatic dance. And you know, reference another tool of a dear sister, Patriarchy, who exposed me to ecstatic dance, but she leads a guided shamanic experience through blindfold dance. There's trance dance and through blindfold dance, where like actually taking away the eye senses, those filters that we see, and really just coming into the body and feeling and moving through what that experience is. And I'm so grateful for those tools.
That sounds exciting and slightly dangerous.
Well, there's tenders, energy tenders.
See, you don't go elbow someone in the face. So, I mean, I love what you said about the connecting with self and allowing space. It almost seems counter directional to getting things done. So how do we come to terms with the fact that meditation, as my brother likes to say, is just sitting, pretending, doing nothing? How does that help us to get things done?
It's interesting because I think we've been getting so much done. And it's been a lot of like what I met in the mycelial network as a big contraction in my being, where I was guided by, you know, peers that are in a social experiment to hold a container and support the membrane of full expression. The Light Leadership Group, the transformation agency, I was gifted experiences with them where we sat in circle for 5 to 7 days, connected with each other, and what came up, we met. And just like for us to come to a level of awareness, like I don't care how spiritual you are and how much work you've done, we have so much more work to do, especially with the unique constellations. And if they're not a diverse constellation, there's so much of these core wounds of humanity and in our DNA that haven't had a chance to be expressed. There's rage and anger that exists within our beings from ancestors, and that we haven't held a space and haven't designed a culture. I don't want to say designed, but helped nurture a culture for that to move. I even witnessed it this weekend as we had these race council talks, that there were things coming up, and the women that wanted to speak, they couldn't find the words to express. And to me, like, before there were words, there were sounds. There's this primalness that hasn't been allowed in what we've created, in the doing, in the way of doing business, in the way of building. Like, we haven't given space for that to exist. And so I feel like for us to grow in this diverse ecosystem, is that being part of the culture, really having like a sense of a space to allow for those expressions to be held.
Yeah, beautiful. That's a nice segue back into the community, the space to be held. Carl Jung said the greatest gift you can give anyone is the space to be heard. So once you've gone in and given yourself that space, which is the meditation and the yoga, and then what sort of community structures have you found are most supportive for continuing that space?
I feel like communication is a really important tool, and I think things have come up with new relationships in my new collaborative endeavors, where that culture hasn't really been shared, or we haven't come into any agreements around, like, how are we doing this process work? We've got tools of nonviolent communication and circling and counsel. Now we're having these, someone just mentioned another one where they're like acting out these exaggerated archetypes. And I'm really excited about that. I love the drama of it all. So much of our society has watched so much drama on a screen. And I came to this realization, wow, a lot of my emotions and my understanding of life have been shaped by the things that I've watched. And my emotions, like, even that, like, when I watch something, I'm like, where did that come from? Did it come from an understanding of a movie that I had watched when I was a little girl? And so I'm in inquiry around that. And so communication is really key. And how are we communicating with one another?
I love that mention of the archetypes and embracing the different archetypes and in a dramatic way. What do you think are some of the blind spots that people have in communication? Because I mean, the blind spots are obviously, one can't see their own blind spot. That's the whole point of a blind spot, But so, what do you think are some of the community-based blind spots that are forward-thinking, neoliberal, hippie, conscious, spiritual, healer communities, who are basically the people we're trying to build with? What are some of the blind spots that those communities have?
I think that, like, I don't want to say it's a blind spot. It's just, it's an observation from myself, having lived in a couple different communities, at least during this time. And I speak to communities where it's like, what is the identity of the community? What is the identity of the organization? And I oftentimes think of, like, well, there's the DNA, and then there's this sense of self, right, within ourselves. Like, what is my meme? What is my avatar? Like, how am I displayed online. And it's the same with organizations that are forming. What is our identity? It goes back to what I was sharing around the vision and the core values. And I'm still in inquiry. Like, I don't really know, but what I'm witnessing is that those aren't set up in a way. Many of these communities have jumped, and I'm so grateful for that, because like, how do you learn without like actually doing and experiencing? And so it's like this interesting dance of like, in the mind, what are we writing? What is our identity? And like noticing like these communities have shifted and changed throughout like the past couple of years of, well, oh, we are a community, we're an intentional community. Oh, but we're also a business. And being able to communicate that to the people that are coming in, that are looking to find purpose within those spaces, and ways to offer their skill sets. And I guess it goes to the onboarding of it. And I've been kind of tagged where they were like, people in the groups have been like, don't use onboarding. It feels so hierarchical, and I don't really have a language for that, but that's why I'm really, I go back to your the social synergy work that you've done, Mark and Vishal, and I'm really inspired by that, because I really feel like it helps not only the communities and these organizations get a sense of like, who are we and what are we doing together, that also the person that's coming in, who am I and how do I see myself integrating into that?
Right. So, and I suppose in order for somebody to identify what role they have in this new system, they have to have first sat with themselves and allowed themselves to have the space to be heard again. So if they've not done that inner work, do you suggest you kind of, all right, go off and do some inner work, like send them away, kind of like, go sit in a corner and meditate for a year and come back?
Well, I guess like
everyone.
I guess that goes with like what some of my special gifts are, is like I help as some form of conscious concierge, because I'm tracking a lot of these different things. And, I've been challenged so much as to like, how am I sharing my gifts and earning from that in a way that feels reciprocal and regenerative for the energy that I'm giving. And how grateful I am to have been in like, the past 5 years, yoga studios, or like with Wanderlust Festival, or in these festival cultures where you've got like a little taste of everything, and then having a choice, like, how do you want to continue that learning experience? And so I oftentimes refer to what I would love for us to build together as a whole as this center camp. And I think that comes like with dispute. People are like, whoa, decentralization and centralization, and how are we doing that? But to me, like, if we go back to like that DNA notion, like, then that can then fractal to the next and fractal to the next. And I refer to, the Burning Man metaphor as well, as like, that membrane of Black Rock City, and inside of it is all the magic that happens. And in order for that experience to actually take form and take shape, there's people who are on site for 7 months out of the year that are doing the builds. And there's people that are part of this organization that's actually helped supplying the resources and just, connecting. And there's these camps that are meeting, and that happens all year round for this experience. So yeah, I think it's like a navigational tool set that helps, at least, connecting with someone personally, and hearing their story and hearing what they're passionate about, and then working as, I don't want to say a coach, but a guide, like someone who, like for me, like I help to illuminate that. And, the human design, like I said, is really new to me. And I have an undefined G, and from what I'm understanding is like, I don't have a sense of self or identity. And I was really sad about it. I was like, I don't know who I am. Okay. And I had to sit with that until another friend like helped share a little bit more around what that is. And they said it's such a great tool to have because I can actually help like reflect and illuminate other, like see potential timelines for the human that I'm sitting in front of. So yeah,
You're very good reflector of where people stand, in my experience, of where
yeah.
people are.
I'm a generator by human design, but I think with that open G, it like helps me be able to just see potentials for people.
What about patriarchy? Now, you know, arguably, patriarchy is the main fucking problem with society and with everything. I mean, it ruined religion, it ruined spirituality. How much is patriarchy still an issue for you in the worlds that you collect in the collaborative worlds, in these new communities, in these new forms?
I mean, it's a huge challenge for me as I'm doing my inner work. You know, we each have our own journey, and you know, mine goes back to my relationship with the masculine and how I've joined different projects and working environments along the way where it's been mostly men who have been at the seat of the table and making the decisions. And in my experience, like I've been the support, the inspiration, the assistant, the secretary. And I think that's why I've received like so much expert skill training, because I've been doing a lot. And yeah, I don't know, honestly. Like,
I mean, would all of these things be better if they were just run by women?
well, it's interesting because like, you know, I go back to how society has like shaped us. And I think back to like growing up as a girl and like hearing like, oh, if he doesn't like you, then you make them, or not that if he doesn't like you, but if he's not like in like there, then you make the move, you initiate, or go for everything that you desire, and be at the seat of the table. And so like I oftentimes refer to my experiences like I've had to put my man pants on to be in meetings.
Right.
And so I'm still working in my own journey to balance my masculine, which has been really heavy in how I've shown up in collaborative experiences and projects, and to step into my feminine. And where it gets confusing for me right now is like, oh, here's this like human design structure that's been offered, and it's, you know, as a generator, like wait to initiate, wait to respond. And you know, as in divine feminine leadership, you know, we're hearing like surrender, lean back, like let it unfold. And it's really a challenge right now because like I could lean back, but then there's still this like unconscious patriarchal energy that is there, that is like roaring, you know. And so then I meet it with my man pants, my masculine side, and want to like be that voice for the feminine oppression.
But you be it with the masculine man pants on.
Yeah, and it's not working.
Because I mean, are you being a voice then for the feminine oppression, or are you just reiterating the masculine oppression and masculine and masculine?
Right.
It's kind of like how we've now as a society met this, the systemic racism that's in the country, and then now these protests and then riots and what have you. That it's like, how much do we meet the oppressive force with an equal opposite oppressive force? Like, what is the tactic to best dissolve the thing we don't want? Like, do we crush it with other equal force, or do we Gandhi it? Do we, you know, do we allow the space to be and risk pain and suffering? But for like, is there a longevity, a different longevity to approaching it with that feminine sit back and allow the space for it to be heard notion rather than attacking?
And I don't know. I think that there's still like that this present time right now, there's so much that goes so deep that without that level of expression, that we can't really step into this feminine side of leaning back, like, and how can we hold that space in a field of love for that expression to occur, to move through us.
What do you think needs to change for that to occur? What systems do we need in place to allow the space for the feminine energy to be heard? And again, we're not talking about women versus men, although generally women are more feminine than men.
Yeah.
But we
And
are,
I think it's like the level of trust and safety, like people feeling safe and in the containers that they're in. And not that everyone needs to be in a box or a container, but like as we're opening these containers for these human experiences, and I think of these protests, like, well, I haven't been on the ground and I'm not sure what's happening. So I apologize if I'm making assumptions, but like, if I was like, how can the groups who are protesting together like come to a unified field and a sense of prayer and ritual of like, this is what we're standing for right now, and hold that within the people who are gathering, if that's making sense, and that may be happening, and then moving from that place. But then that's also challenging because there's so many of these outside things that can't be controlled. They're meeting the police force, like the military force, like, and that's so opposing. And so no matter how much, if you're protesting with love and you're there for the purpose of it, it's like you're still met with the outside agents that will like come into the culture of what you've been creating together. So I don't know.
I can't help feel that there are keys, patterns to become aware of that are applicable in the wider society issue, as there are in these microcosms of communities that we're so interested in building. What are you most excited about the future with regards to these collaborative, heart-based, honoring the space for community? Where do you see the future going, and what are you most excited about?
I'm most excited about people coming in and sharing their gifts. And I'm most excited, I learn from physical experiences. Like I'm continuously evolving that way. And even in these Zoom spaces, I love learning. I love growing. And I'm most excited about, creating a space for access to that. Facebook is great. It's been a wonderful offering to our world and where we are. And I also don't believe that it's where we'll stay. It's because the culture of it hasn't really been established. I look at how much conflict takes place in our chat bubbles and on our walls, and like I want to say like etiquette of some sort of, how are we engaging and interacting, and like when words aren't really helping in that conflict that's arising, like then where do we move into when that happens? And so I'm excited to help support creating those spaces for healing. And I know there's a lot of different initiatives that are out there that are desiring to do that. And I know that there's groups that are working to support the healers and the energy workers to help provide them with resources and illuminate their gifts and share their gifts so that they can be of service to humanity. I'm excited about that because as an entrepreneur and as somebody who I pretty much talk to everybody I meet. And I've, growing up was a bartender and a waitress. And, I've had this like exchange with people on a broad scale. I guess one of my gifts is to be able to just connect with people around some common ground. And, from that place, like, what is the common ground that we all share? Like really coming into that, like, what is the common ground that we all share? Well, the common ground is our planet. Like, and how are we in right relationship with our planet and what's here right now?
Mm-hmm. Right relationship. The common ground. I mean, that was interesting because it's like the minimum that's needed to relate to something is, the lowest common denominator. Find the lowest common denominator between you, and inevitably we go back to nature, and we go back to the earth and the balance with earth. There's a lot of work going on here.
I know your computer is like, the screen is moving. I'm like, uh-oh, what's going on there? We're pulsing, Mark.
It's the energy creation. Nicole, it's been fantastic to chat with you. And you're coaching. You're seeing clients at the moment. You're helping people to find that balanced center of self.
I'm available. Yeah.
Okay. How do people find you? Catalyst of Culture?
Catalyst of Culture on Facebook, or you could message me on Facebook, Nicole Franco. And my email is catalystandco@gmail. And but Facebook right now is the best way to reach me. And yeah.
And what are some of the other upcoming systems that we should look out for instead of Facebook?
We'll have to dive into that a little bit later.
Any couple of names? What I believe high-low is certain waves.
That's the one I'll share most about, that I'm really excited about, because I feel and believe at their core, they've really established a way of being and relating with one another. And I say that about Terran Collective, not high-low. High-low has come into as a gift for them to steward and bring forth for us to be able to use. I'm really excited about that and about them and what they're doing, because they're considering all parts, and it's going to be a free service for those. And so being able to use our mycelial network to channel resources into groups that are building with that heart and with that intention. So that's one of them. And there's a few others that I'd love to see start back up, which is your social synergy project, Mark.
If people want to get involved now, they go to mycelial web on Facebook.
People want to get involved now. I think that's one of my challenges, is like us having the container for us to be able to play in and to create. And we'll be meeting on this Thursday to really support that contraction into how we expand. So I have a email list that people can subscribe to, or they can go and ask to join the Mycelial Network group on Facebook.
Right, and that's on Facebook? Where's the newsletter? Not newsletter, the mailing list.
The mailing list is it has a URL, so it's not really able to share with them.
Okay, but they can find that the Mycelial web on Facebook.
Yeah, they are, or just reaching out to me. Yeah.
All right. Yes, you're the processing hub. What did you put?
For now, until something else emerges that is a tool for us to be able to help navigate.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, we're watching the space. Clearly, the stuff are changing, and I hope there's a quickening going on. Thank you so much, Nicole Franco, for coming on and sharing your time and your space and your community insight with us.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your gifts as a listener and an investigator and an inquirer, and holding the space for this show, and being a super connector as well. You've brought so many amazing people to this platform that you've created. So thank you for that, and thank you for the invitation to be part of it.
Absolutely, you are a forever part. Never joined, forever in. I don't know. Anyway, thank you, Nicole. Just to sum up the show, hang there. I'll come back to you after. Thank you so much for coming on.
Bye.
Wow. Okay. So again, we're seeing these patterns that it starts with self. We have to go into alignment with self. We have to go into inquiry, into presence, and sit with ourselves, both if we're doing movement, yoga type of thing, but also sitting in meditation and inquiry. Again, curiosity, inquiry into the self. Society is so programmed us to push, 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 go, create, go out, build, 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 when actually, if we're doing that from a space that is not incorporating all of ourself, all of who we are and what we are into a unity, a union, a yoga, if we don't accept all the sides of ourselves, we're like building on foundations that are skewered. Our integrity means, our coherence. Coherence is the key, because coherence means when one frequency or one thing supports the next thing. So a sentence is coherent if each word supports the next. If in order speak I do doesn't support the next, it's not coherent. And without sitting with ourselves in the practice of listening, inner listening, which most societies have not incorporated into us. I don't remember meditating in school ever. Why? Why was that not part of a practice, an inquiry, a sitting inquiry? I mean, time out step. Isn't that the whole point? To sit, but we don't educate our children in that way. And society has not educated us. So we're developing it as adults now. So sitting with self and realizing what is your truth, what is the authentic you, and allowing each part of you to become heard. Remember, the greatest gift you can give anyone, including yourself, is the space to be heard. So what is it you need to hear, or what part of you needs to be heard? And that enables you to be authentic, honest. I've got this fucking hand. I've got this face. I've got to accept it. I mean, there's no point pretending I don't have the face. I have this face. I have to accept it. Now, with that acceptance, you bring it together, and honestly, authentically, and curiously, you allow the union of self to occur at the core. That's the starting point. It always is. And then we can bring it to community. We can bring our authentic selves more to community. And in that identity of having spent time, invested time in listening to yourself, when it comes to community group action, you're not going to be triggered so much. You're not going to just trying to be responded. You're not going to be go, 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 produce, produce, produce. You're going to sit, and you're going to sit with all of you, and you're going to bring all of you to the table. And that will gain honor and respect and trust from your other collaborators, because they'll look and they'll go, oh, all of that person is here. Oh, you know what? Maybe I don't need to fight all the time. Maybe I can, in reflection, maybe I can see parts where I need to incorporate all of me. I would love to bring all of me to the table. Oh, wow. And suddenly you have, like a virus, transmitted the consciousness of union, of togetherness within yourself first. And that's how we build communities. Wonderful. Thank you so much. And mentors. I love the mentors as a reflection, as Franco said, the mentors, finding ourselves finding ourselves a mentor and being a mentor for other people. It's that yin yang, give and take. It's the we are the father as well as the son. We are the mother as well as the daughter. We are the parent and the child simultaneously of this spiraling creation. It seems complicated, but it's actually so simple that we miss it. Cool. All right, thanks very much. I have a book Evolve, bookevolve.com. bookevolve.com. Evolve, love. Evolve the love. Okay, bookevolve.com. So thank you today to my guest, Nicole Franco. Please reach out to her. She is a resource of collaborative design. It has been such a pleasure. Please share. It's that side, isn't it? Please share the video. The shares are what it's about. Sharing's caring. All right, lots of love. See you tomorrow.